Everybody, and welcome to the latest in Complex Countries series of sessions on trying to help treasurers struggle through all the many different things which are out there, the many things competing for time. And today I'm very pleased to welcome Hugo van Wijk from Vallstein. Hugo is a former banker, and Vallstein provides help with a key topic for most treasurers. We all struggle with it, which is how to manage banking relationships, in particular how you manage the wallet share and how you try to be very fair with people. And Hugo brings great advice from the other side with his knowledge of the other side. As per usual with these things, we are very pleased to hear from experts. This doesn't mean to say we necessarily endorse the products, but obviously if anybody wants to talk to Hugo separately, then he will be very happy to do so. So Hugo, thank you for your time. First, and for me, this really separates into two things. The first is there's the easy bit, which is cash management fees, checking the invoice and so on. And I know you provide that service. So if we can go through that quickly and go through it quickly, because in your opinion and my opinion, the real value add is the other piece, which is how we manage all the stuff where we don't see invoices. So let's start. What happens on the cash management fee business?
Yeah, so basically what we do there is we process electronic invoices like Count 86 or other billing files that the banks can make available to our clients. We process them and we compare then the actual charged fees to the contractually agreed pricing to identify overbilling, underbilling, sometimes also items on which no agreed price was put in the contract. And obviously that pays for itself because you will find overbilling and you can claim refunds. It is quite labor intensive. And I think a better way of dealing with that problem is to try to simplify pricing you agree with the bank on cash management in the first place. Because the less items the bank charges, the less there is to reconcile. And then try to view the value of the cash management business you bring to the bank in the context of your overall relationship, in the context of the overall shareholder.
So clear advice, try to resist the temptation to be too thorough. And it's the old thing of KISS, keep it simple, stupid. Okay.
Exactly.
Now let's move on to the other areas then, because where we all get very frustrated is things like FX, where we know the bank makes money, although the bank often says it doesn't, but we don't know how much. So how do you approach those areas?
That's a very interesting topic, because indeed, if a bank would not make money on FX, they would not do the deal with you. And of course, banks will complain that it's not enough and that the margins are too thin. But if they would not be making money on it, they would not engage in the transaction. The point, however, is I think if you analyze it from a treasurer's point of view, you have to be careful to mind the separation between what we call client book and trading book. And so if you look at your FX business through the eyes of your relationship manager, you can claim a recognition of what we call the arbitrage revenue recognition that goes into the client book. What the dealing room in the bank does with the transaction or combination of transactions from different clients over time can result in a trading profit or loss, but that cannot be reconciled back to the individual client. So you have to be realistic about how much revenue contribution you can claim in the context of your shareholder. And that's where the separation between client book and trading book is an important one to keep in mind.
So we shouldn't try to work out how much profit they're making. And I believe you said that the RMs are actually just paid a fixed fee, right?
They get a revenue recognition. Whether it's actually cash payment, that I don't know. I don't think it is. But so in terms of how much business value they bring in per client to a bank, that is what we call the client book. That is where the account manager can claim its contribution to the business development of the bank. And that is where the separation of trading book and client book is important. You cannot work out the trading profit for the bank on every FX deal you bring to the bank and claim a recognition for it. What if the bank books a loss? Is that then something you take into account into your shareholder as well? You don't. So
it's not our problem. And as you said, the acid test is if the bank walks away, then they're really not interested.
Exactly.
And would the same thing apply to other things like, for example, lending business? Because again, we don't know what margins they're making.
No, but so the way we analyzed these things is in the context of a matrix where we plot all the banking products and services that you use from a bank on two components. One is return on solvency, so the return on the associated regulatory capital that the bank has to block because they engage in transactions with you. That is the Basel rules. And the other component is the recurrent nature of the product. So if you have a one-off fee, that is less attractive for a bank than if it is recurrent nature. Now, lending, the product you mentioned, is typically very recurrent. It will produce revenues for a number of years, but the return on solvency there obviously is lower compared to cash management. Now, you have to be careful when you make this kind of analysis. You should not be too simplistic. Comparing a working capital loan with a long-term finance facility, that's really comparing apples and pears. So you have to be careful to take into account the correct capital allocation. But lending business in principle certainly is interesting for banks, certainly if combined with fee business, and certainly because of the recurrent nature of the revenues.
So this takes us into the eternal challenge, which is the revolver and how you reward banks for taking part in the revolver. So how do you suggest we approach that?
The way we advise our clients on that is, first of all, to know the composition of your total wallet. So you have the revolver as part of that total wallet, with its revenue contribution, with the return on solvency impact, and then you see what other products you also use from the various banks, and you should try to get to the correct package that offers a reasonable return and reasonable revenue share to each bank. You will never get all the banks on the same level because it's in practice impossible to divide your cash management over 15 or 20 banks. But by applying that approach, you can come a long way, at least showing the banks that you are mindful of their position when they deal with you in terms of capital allocation and revenue share. And in some cases, you can give a part of the cash management. In other cases, you can combine it with a certain amount of FX volume, or maybe the one-off fees from the bond placement. But first, you have to start where you are today in terms of your total wallet per product and per what we call attractivity components.
So it boils down to, yes, there's different things which mean have a different value to the bank, but really where you gain from this is actually mapping it out in a matrix.
Yeah, that's how we do, to provide insight into this wallet matrix. Yeah.
But having said that, there still remains an element of judgment in there.
Absolutely, and you will never get all banks on the same level, and different banks also have different strategies. Some banks are more comfortable with just being an asset taker and they give less about the side business. Other banks really have a very clear strategy on being a global transaction bank, or they want to excel in certain trade products. And that is up to the bank to decide then what part of the business they are most interested in the context of your relationship.
And would I be right in thinking that a lot depends on whether they've also decided that you're a strategic relationship?
Absolutely. Banks have all these segmentations between corporate and commercial banking and key strategic account, and they want to be a house bank or second tier bank. And that's up for the bank to work out that segmentation and account strategies. I think what you can do as a client is know exactly your position towards all your banks, the size of your wallet. That will tell you something about for how many banks there is room at your table. Maybe you are right now overbanked and you have 20 house banks, and in reality you should have 10. That kind of conclusions you can draw from making a wallet analysis where you stand today, and from there then see how you can optimize things. In many cases, you can give a larger share of wallet to fewer banks, leverage your cross-buying power, as we call it, and still create a win-win for the house banks that manage to deepen then the relationship with you.
Fascinating. Many thanks, Hugo. I think that really helps because I think most of us know all of this intrinsically, but I think what you're saying is that having a disciplined approach to put a structure in place makes you much better informed. Would that be a fair summary?
Absolutely. Yeah, you need to have some analytics to get the direction right, but you should not overdo it and get lost in endless detail.
Well, there's still the art of the deal, which
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. Many thanks, Hugo. I found that fascinating.
Thank you for having me.